on this episode of Off-Road Outdoors.
You asked anybody on the river and they all said that they had never seen the water this high.
Blake and Tanner hit the river right after historic floods hit Missouri.
So I was really excited. I figured we'd be ripping into them left and right.
Will the rising water levels be a blessing or a curse in disguise?
It was a better season than we've had in a long time just because of the rain and the water levels. You asked anybody on the river and they all said that they had never seen the water this high in quite a few years, and they hadn't been snagging this good in quite a few years. So, I mean, overall, as a season and as, you know, success rates go, I mean, it was up quite a bit from what we've been dealing with the past few years with droughts and everything.
Yeah, there's a bunch you can snag into out there on the river. All different kinds of fish, mostly logs and driftwood, but it's a fun time to be out there and just getting an exercise in, trying to reel in a 60-pounder. Snagged into a couple of flathead while we've been out snagging for spoons, and snagged a lot of gar, and those ones, snagging into a gar it can be fun if they're the right size, but other than that, it's kind of annoying because once you get them on, it's kind of a tricky situation to get them off without getting all cut up by their sharp teeth and stuff. So,
with it being a few dry years where we didn't, you know, have good conditions to even bother going, or just really, you know, bad attempts at trying with poor conditions in the past few years, our tackle was, you know, needing some updating, so we had to restring everything, get brand new hooks and sinkers and all that. So yeah, I had to spend a fair amount of time getting everything, you know, re-rigged up and ready to go back out. Roost right in here. They're probably right next to us. We just haven't heard them yet. Mm-hmm. And then they gobble right next to us about 7 o'clock. And then they pitch down about 7:30.
We didn't have like any of our tackle or anything ready. I had to wake up super early and make a trip over a little deeper into Missouri than we were fishing to go to a bait shop that had everything we needed. But once I got all that, we were able to get all our rigs set up to how they were supposed to be. We had to put all new line on because we hadn't been out, and I hadn't been out in about a year, so I wanted to make sure I had all new line on and everything and make sure everything was good to go. So we did all that, got new hooks, new weights, got all those on, and had everything set up perfectly to snag some, but it didn't really work that way.
12 to 14 of them, and they all started coming out together. And Mark was already standing up in the blind, and we had the sun behind us, so his shadow was casting on the mesh, and they saw that, and they all started looking, and he's like, "Tanner, get up here, they're gonna run, shoot one." And I just aimed at the closest one, and he was already running away, and his head was like going like this, and he probably got, I don't know, maybe 25 yards out, and I didn't even feel good about it, but his Hail Mary.
I was surprised with our turkey hunt just a couple weeks ago or whatever. Yeah, doing all right.
You know, he jumped the fence.
Yeah, we always go to Missouri when we go. We just, you know, we've got good spots there, and we've gone there ever since.
Hey,
we
am I
started
getting
snagging.
paid for all this video
So
footage you're doing here? What
We're
we got going on?
snagging out of southwestern Missouri, and along.
What is
it's,
that?
I'm not.
So we were on the Meridazine River on the Missouri side, and in the past we've got into quite a few good fish there, and plenty of them, well over 60 pounds.
Yeah, we were out on the Meridazine River there, just right over on the Missouri side, and it's where we've been snagging for them since I started doing it, and it's not too far from where we live, so it's a pretty good spot just to get over to real quick and start ripping for some.
If it's even worth it.
Initially, we checked this old bridge that we fished a lot in the past. So we went to this bridge, and there was a lot of people there this time. Evidently, it was really good. There were guys we talked to there that said in the past couple of days, like 100-some fish were pulled out of there. So it was really good, but it was also really crowded because it was such a popular spot.
When we got out there, we went to a little spot we just called the bridge, just right under this bridge off this highway, and got down there, and there was a pretty good mess of people there already snagging, so we were just kind of waiting our turn.
And the snagging was good. So yeah, as far as us getting a spot to snag from, with people who weren't wanting to move, pretty much crossed that spot off of our list of places to try this year.
Yeah, I got 100 fish. I felt like if I got 80,
And then we ran into one of my dad's old buddies, and he was kind enough to let us come over to his property that's just right next to where we were trying to snag to.
We did get an opportunity to fish off someone's private property on riverfront. Somebody my dad knew for a long time, and he lives right there on the river. He invited us over there, and we tried snagging there from his spot. There was still a lot of debris, a lot of trees in the water, a lot of stuff to get around, and of course every few seconds there was something rolling down the river that made you have to pause and wait for a better chance to snag. But you could see fish coming up and down, and you'd see a spoon or a tail come out of the water every now and then, but for whatever reason, like I said, it's a lot of luck when you're casting from the bank. It's just a matter of your hook lining up with a fish at the right time. So
there's trees right down in there, so start reeling it up.
He let us go over there and start throwing out and snagging, and I'd say we threw out probably 10 or 15 times before we hooked into our first log, and then from then on it just kind of seemed like it was every other cast we were finding a log or up against the bank finding some weeds or something, and started losing hooks and weights and everything pretty fast there. So
I've never had one.
Yeah, he did. That's exactly what I did.
So me personally, I'd never seen the river as high as it was this year. A lot of people, a lot of old timers are on the river. You talk to them and they said it'd been a long time since it was this high, but they'd seen it get that way before. But me, I hadn't seen it that high ever. And places we used to stand and snag from in seasons gone by were, 15, 20 feet underwater this year. And, our spots that we had to stand to snag, you were standing in the woods in a lot of spots just surrounded by trees just because you couldn't get out to where normally the water line would have started. You're in the timber where the water had risen up to, and you're surrounded by trees and brush and stuff. So a lot of those traditionally good spots that were there for snagging were, made bad by now being surrounded by trees and brush and everything else that makes it hard to, set up and have a good snagging spot to where you can, have space to clear your pole and all that. So, yeah, definitely the highest I've ever seen the river. And
I was really excited because we haven't had like the kind of water we had this year in a while. I haven't seen the river as high as it was. I don't know if I've ever seen it that high. So I was really excited. I figured we'd be ripping into them left and right on every other cast, but that didn't really happen. So, but yeah, I was really excited. I haven't snagged into a spoonbill in almost like 2 years or something like that. So I was ready to get out there on the high water and see what we could get done. But
ID and when you spell it out, it spells a word. And when you tell people they're having an ID 10T, or you're making fun of them and they don't know it until they spell out what ID 10T makes.
I don't know, I'd say we probably were there for about 30, 40 minutes throwing out and losing everything. So we finally packed up our stuff from there and went over to a spot we call the Riffle, which is not even, it's like a minute or two away from where we just were. So we got there real quick and there wasn't hardly anyone at that spot. So we started throwing out.
We tried another old reliable spot. In the past, we've caught a lot of fish out of this spot, and there was a few people there, but pretty much 99% of the bank locations to cast from were underwater. So there was just this little slab of land you could stand from right there at the water's edge where it had risen so far. I mean, it was up, 25, 30 feet from where you used to be standing down on the riverbank casting from. So yeah, that little limited access spot made it really difficult, but we tried. We didn't get into any fish there either. Got into a few snags again, but I mean, if the water was just a little bit further down, it would have been like perfect. But with it, I mean, it was just, record high at this point, and it was just giving us just a little sliver of spots to stand. Of course, you're surrounded by timber and poison ivy everywhere, so yeah, where you could get and stand and have, good, reach around to cast and have all that area around you where you're not bumping into anything, it was pretty tight.
And throwing out about the same at this spot as it was the last. We're just snagging into logs and trees and weeds and not hitting any fish. So it was fun to be out there and see the water up, how it was and everything, and getting to see some of other people's catches and stuff, but we caught a whole lot of nothing, so.
By the time we got out there, it was like a few days left of the spoonbill snagging season, and yeah, it looked like a bunch of people were still, hooking into them, but by the time we got there, most of the good spots were kind of taken, and people were real, happy to have their spots and not anxious to move. So we kind of, took what spots we could, but it played out how it did. I mean, we threw a bunch of times and tried to snag, but we got into a lot of currents and a lot of snags, trees. I mean, there was every few seconds there was a whole tree coming down the river, and logs and all kinds of different debris. So the snagging conditions were pretty rough as far, from the bank and all, but I mean, there were plenty of fish, but just a matter of lighting into one from the bank is really a matter of luck, and it's a gamble whether or not you're going to get one either way. So it takes quite a few times, quite a few tries, a lot of casts, a lot of time, and a lot of hours on the river that we just didn't have this year. So the amount of time we did get to spend was, fun getting out there on the river with it being up and roaring like it was. But we didn't hit as many fish as we do, not even like bycatch like gar or carp or anything. I mean, we didn't really get into anything but tree limbs and whole trees this year. So, but it's shame we couldn't hook into some big fish while we were there, but that's how it goes. And just for whatever reason this year, I think it was just the timing of it, and the conditions were good, but they also come with a lot of cons. That being like I mentioned, all the debris in the water, making fishing from the bank a lot more difficult than it already is. So.
Well, I'm really excited to get everything ready for catfishing, because past few summers I just really haven't had the time, so it's been an itch of mine I've been really wanting to scratch, and now it's time. I've been starting to get everything ready, and I think it's going to be a really good summer for it. We've had a lot of water, and I think once it's starting to go down like it is now, I think within the next couple weeks, we're just going to be.
Yeah, overall, I'm really looking forward to other fishing opportunities this year, especially catfish and bass and bluegill, stuff like that I like to go after every year. But it should be really good with the waters being this high. A lot of old creeks and ponds and lakes that I've fished every year, just like the rivers, have been kind of low. In the past few years, we've had some really bad droughts, stacked on top of each other a few years in a row. So it's made some of good old honey holes kind of dried up, or just not as good as they should be, especially ponds. You don't like to fish the ponds when they're really low, and you've had some like oxygen die-offs of fish not being able to survive, and low water levels and extreme heat. So with as much rain as we've got this year, I think it'll be really good for that type of fishing, pond fishing for bass, and going to lakes and different spots, rivers, stuff like that for catfish. So I'm looking forward to trying and see what we can get out of that this year.
But yeah, I think it's going to be a good summer for it. I've already got all my poles set up, and I was getting my boat ready the other day, so I'm ready to go out there and start hooking into some cats and even bass and crappie. I know with how the water's been, people are just going to be ripping lips like crazy this summer, I think, so.